You know, like out at the spray farm, they do that same where they inject that sludge into the alfalfa.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, with the cows eating that, it wouldn't get back to us through the meat, or would it?
Mike has a question about they're injecting it into an alfalfa field, that sludge from the wastewater treatment plant, and then they harvest the alfalfa and feed it to cattle. As long as they're injected underground, it's not on the leaf surfaces, the bacteria isn't going to come up through the stems. The plant will not absorb bacteria. So it's safe that way, as long as it's being injected underground. Now that's not true if they got heavy metals in it. You know, then the plants will absorb minerals, they won't absorb bacteria. So that's the difference. You know, they will, if you're injecting stuff that has mercury or lead or arsenic, yeah, then you're going to have a problem in the food chain, because the plants will absorb that kind of stuff and it'll end up in the food chain. Yeah, they won't absorb DDT. But if DDT is applied on the surface and then they eat that, that's where the problem comes. So that would be the pollutants that we're concerned about on liquid applied wastes, are those mainly those heavy metals and things like, if there are PCBs, there's some other carcinogens out there that we have to really be concerned about that are very specialized, that can come from certain industrial processes. Cyanide and stuff. There's some pretty nasty chemicals that might come out of certain processes, like especially from mining. If you're looking at tailings from a mining operation and the water, that's the downstream side flow from water used in a mining operation, that can be some pretty nasty stuff. So it has to be monitored very carefully, because plants will absorb certain things that are going to be detrimental as it gets into the food chain. You know, we talked about the alfalfa absorbs the mercury, for example. The cow eats the alfalfa, then the cow absorbs the mercury. Then you milk the cow and the milk has mercury in it. Then you feed it to your baby and now all of a sudden your baby has mercury poisoning.
Kill the cow.
You know, we can handle some mercury, and we probably aren't going to drink enough milk out of that situation. If the cow's still alive, we'll probably still be alive. But it's a little different when it's a little baby, and that's its primary food source, and it's getting a toxic dose all of a sudden. And it takes a while for that to work out of them. Now, we all have some mercury in us, and if we didn't, we'd be unhealthy. There's a balance, but we don't want too much. Get too much, then we die. Or at least get sick. We have to be concerned about the volume of the wastewater. You know, how much do we have to deal with generally on a yearly basis? You know, we get on a food processing plant, they might process year-round. Or they might run 9 months out the year, 6 months out of the year, whatever their run cycle is. We have to know what that total volume is and how we're going to get rid of it within that year's time. Now, in municipality, they're going to have a load all year round. As long as there's people in the city, you're going to have sewerage to deal with. And so there's going to be wastewater to deal with all the time in that situation. You know, in a lot of cities, we talked about the aspect of gray water. They're taking that water and applying it on play fields, on golf courses, even city parks, because it's recycled water that they're not having to pay another price for. They already own it. And sometimes it's very economical to do that. Site location becomes very critical, as you might guess. Number one, we have to be concerned about wind direction, because when we irrigate liquid waste, there's going to be smell involved. There is an odor problem. Guaranteed, it's going to smell bad to people. Now, some people just say it's the smell of money. Most people say, my gosh, that stinks. Okay? And nobody wants to be smelling a sewer all day, every day at their house. So location, location, location. You know, that's the word that you use when you get into liquid waste disposal. So wind direction, standard, normal wind direction is very critical. Slope. You know, if you get any runoff at all, where's it going to go? It better not go on the neighbors. You'll have a lawsuit that never ended. You need to be concerned about the infiltrate or intake rate of the soil. Will it intake as fast as you want to put it down? Same old adage. We want it all to go in the ground. We don't want any of it sitting on the surface. We don't want any of it running off. So the intake rates of the soil are going to be critical. If we have a high clay content in an area, we may not be able to use sprinkler irrigation for liquid waste. May not work. It just won't get in the ground fast enough.
Sand would be ideal.
The sandier the soil, generally the more ideal the soil. Absolutely. Not every place has sand, but you know, here in Walla Walla, we have to rely on silt loam, and so they're irrigating up here. We have a 1,000-acre spray farm to take the waste off of the food processors down on the west side of town. And that's a silt loam soil. They intake rates between 25 hundredths of an inch and 30 hundredths of an inch an hour. So they know that's the rate maximum application that they can apply it. Now they also have to know, you know, when during the year can you apply it? Can we run it 365 days out of the year? Well, sometimes, some places sure could. You know, down in the south you could. You're not going to have freeze experiences that are going to mess your operations up. Here in Walla Walla, they can run those things darn near 365 days out of the year. We don't have too many days a year it freezes, but where's the water going? If we're watering during the winter time and we don't have any consumptive use effectively, we just start saturating the soil and driving the water deeper and deeper into the profile, and that's not real healthy. So what we end up doing in this country is during the wintertime we lagoon a lot of that. And then we have a 9-month growing season that we got to use up 12 months worth of water effectively. So we got to figure our volume to usage and figure out how we're going to use up, you know, how many acres is it going to take to get 9 months worth of irrigation out of 12 months worth of wastewater that comes out of those plants, plus evaporation. So lagoons are going to have some evaporative loss off of them as well. Tell you what, you go out and look at some of those lagoons, you wonder why you ever shot a duck and ate it. Because you go out there on those lagoons and there'll be 150,000 ducks sitting out there and all that guck. And you just really start to wonder if you ever wanted to go duck hunting again in your life. Bothers me.